Well, the time is just gone, 6 minutes past 8 as we kick off this morning, as mentioned, with the president of the Muslim Youth Movement of South Africa, Thandile Kona, and this comes against a statement by South African Muslim organizations rejecting the planned shutdown on the 30th of June. Thandile, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, and we do appreciate your time.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and Brother Inayet and your viewers at home. Thank you so much for
Yes,
having me. And
wonderful
Juma
that you're able
Mubarak
to
to
join.
everyone.
Yes, and obviously it's a special day, the day of Ashura as well, the 10th of Muharram. So
Yes,
it's extremely, it's
Alhamdulillah.
a double bonus for us.
Yes. Alhamdulillah.
Right. Tanila, let's just talk about, what is playing out now. Before we get to the statement as well, we've seen a number of statements that have been issued. We've seen the United Ulama Council of South Africa meet up with March and March, and I did read out a response because we tried to get all of UXA on a Wednesday to come on and just to explain what had gone on in the meeting. And they said beyond what was already discussed and the few clips and statements that were issued, they cannot comment any further. We've seen, some response to the statement of the 22 organizations as well. And let's just try and understand, because, at the end of the day, we know that these organizations, you speak about 22 organizations, do represent a broad cross section of Muslims in South Africa. And, these obviously comes against the background of public calls by a few civic groups for this planned shutdown on June the 30th.
Yes, sir, Brother Inayet. The message comes out of concern and out of our Islamic duty to speak out against what we perceive as an injustice against immigrants, undocumented immigrants, in fact, against all immigrants, because the people who are perpetuating these pogroms against people who they perceive to be foreign nationals don't distinguish between documented and undocumented immigrants. So this statement came out of concern that we may run the risk of leaving things until too late. So we must not wait until something happens on June the 30th, and only after then do we caution people against partaking in these kinds of protests. So it is mainly aimed at cautioning people, especially Muslims, to say don't get involved in these kinds of things. Besides these things being illegal or unlawful, this harassing and intimidation and sometimes violent attacks on immigrants, those, I think, those besides them being unlawful, but they are also un-Islamic. Those are not things that are accepted in the fold of Islam, where you treat travelers and visitors to your home and to a place where you stay in an intimidatory and violent manner, in a hostile manner. So the statement is meant to conscientize the community, but also to warn against partaking in these things and to avoid legitimizing, because I saw that some organizations have met with March and others. The risk with that is that you may legitimize these kinds of protests and these kinds of this kind of violent behavior by organizations such as March and those that have joined them, including some political parties that have opportunistically used this genuine grievance. I must say, there's a genuine grievance against uncontrolled immigration into the country. But I must underline this: immigrants are not the primary cause of our socio-economic problems in South Africa. Therefore, they should not be scapegoated.
Well, certainly, and I think I just want to just stay with what you've just said in terms of scapegoating, and also looking at the primary reasons as well. And you articulate this in the statement very, very clearly in terms of calling on the South African government as well to eradicate things like corruption, extortion within the public service. These are definitely genuine problems that we are actually faced with. So over and above, the plight of millions of South Africans being jobless and all the other socio-economic problems that are associated with this, the whole question surrounding corruption, because this is not a problem that has just cropped up now. This is for years and years and years, where South Africa had opened the borders and again paved the way for this type of corruption that we are seeing, whether we're talking about permits, we're talking about visas, we're talking about illegal identification documents, home affairs, all of that actually put together. It's a culmination of problems that have been festering, a festering sore over years.
Very true, Brother Inayet. Look, this crisis has been long coming. Okay, it's a culmination of various factors, mainly corruption in the public sector, especially at Home Affairs, where there are immigrants who've come into the country, they've applied for asylum, they've been waiting for asylum for for as much as 9 years, and they are here in the country. So our duty as citizens is to put pressure on government to sort out this mess, not to take out our anger and frustrations at immigrants. The people that we must hold into account are the people that we have elected to govern us. So we must try and focus on that. There is no way that expelling immigrants from our country will help solve the problems that we are facing. So we need to put things into perspective to show that immigrants are as much victims of the systems that we are crying about as we are. Some of them have to pay huge bribes in order to get papers, and very few of them can afford those bribes. So the crisis that we find ourselves in the country, we find ourselves in the country, the crisis of unemployment, the crisis of poverty, the crisis of inequality, those are not caused by immigrants. There's no evidence that immigrants cause those crises. Also, the last thing, crime in the country, because often you hear that immigrants are being blamed for crime, but the stats debunk that. If you look at our prisons, if you look at the ratio of people getting arrested in the country, immigrants are very, very few. In fact, the majority of immigrants who are in our correctional services are there because of immigration offenses. So we should try and address this issue, but also we should try and fight it with fact-based information out there in the public.
Well, certainly. But also, I think, Thandile, this gives us an opportunity to introspect and to look inwardly as well, because this is exactly what your statement is also talking about, a call to Muslims living in South Africa, a call to look beyond nationality, a call to look beyond race, ethnicity, and also at the same time, in terms of, when we internalize our position and our situation as Muslims in this country, there's a lot of food for thought and that we need to start thinking about.
Yes, that's very true. It's a duty on us Muslims to make sure that we protect the vulnerable. It's a sad situation what you see in KZN, where you see multitudes of immigrants, including women and children, having been forced out of their homes and into the streets. That's a situation that as Muslims we should firstly condemn, but also we should try and prevent or reverse and make sure that people get back into their homes, get back into their jobs, and then we should then focus on putting pressure on our government to address the crisis, the root cause of the crisis, which is unemployment, poverty, inequality, corruption, and many other ills in our society that are not caused by immigrants. But I must say that I must reiterate this, that South Africa faces major socio-economic challenges. That there's no denying that. But I want to emphasize again that there is no evidence that shows that immigrants are in any way responsible for causing the socio-economic challenges that we face. Therefore, we cannot allow a situation where immigrants are made to pay the price for our difficulties as citizens. Muslims have a special duty in the sense that we need to, especially today it is Jumu'ah, we need to use the platforms that we have to speak out against this, but also to caution Muslims against partaking in this. Because I've seen in social media where various prominent Muslims perpetuate or propagate these kinds of ideas that immigrants have come into the country and they've caused problems. And many of them seem to be motivated by a personal grievance rather than societal issues. So we must try and warn against that and conscientize Muslims against harming of immigrants that are in our country. We should try and as much as we can to relieve the situation that we see in KZN.
No, absolutely, and I think this is a very opportune moment in terms of what you are saying, in terms of using our khutbahs on this day of Jummah. Again, as I mentioned, tying in with the 10th of Muharram, which is also a lesson for us in terms of oppression against injustice as well. And we know what had taken place in Karbala. So while we are talking, there are just so many lessons that we can actually draw. And I think if I recall last week, in fact, on social media, there was a recommended Jummah lecture, a khutbah that was actually circulating, telling the khatibs and telling the imams to utilize this lecture last week already. And this, obviously, at the end of the day, it was entitled The Sacred Duty to Protect the Migrants. Now, your statement also speaks about compassion, it talks about assisting displaced migrants, which, alhamdulillah, we are doing well when we see what is
Yeah.
taking place in Sherwood, in Durban, our relief organizations, many organizations coming forward, assisting. So, in that regard, obviously, we do stand out, but I'm sure there's a lot more that we can still do, Tandile. And once again, you mentioned the Jummah platform today, and especially a few days before June the 30th, to be utilized, I would say efficiently, but also at the same time to inspire the Muslim Ummah.
Yes, I must condemn. I must sorry commend the organizations that are providing relief to the immigrants in Durban. They are doing great work, but the focus now should be on preventing what is unfolding in Durban. We should try and use today's Juma and today's khutbah and khutbahs that follows after this every Friday from now on to conscientize people and also to try and prevent these kinds of things from happening, and also to instill in people's minds that the history of Islam is a history of migration. Migration is tied together with the history of Islam. Islam spread through migration. The first migration to Abyssinia, the Muslims, they were welcomed warmly. They were never ill-treated. They were never chased away. So the history of Islam is tied with migration. So it's no different now. Migration is as old as humanity itself. People have been moving around the earth to look for greener pastures. It's not something that we can stop. If there is criminality, it must be dealt with through the criminal justice system. There are courts that are there for that, but there's no way that we can allow a situation where ordinary citizens like you and me go around the streets, harass people, asking for permits, asking for passports. We are in no way empowered to do that. That is the work of immigration officials. That is the work of the police. That is the work of the state and its arms. So we must try and emphasize this, that we should prevent this. This places Muslims, especially in South Africa, in a very vulnerable position, because yes, there is a perception out there that Islam or Muslims are foreigners in South Africa. So this places them at risk. So this is not only something that may happen to other people. It's happening. It's going to happen to us as well. We may fall to victim to this kind of violence. But also, there's a danger and there's a risk that this kind of violence may spread, as we have seen signs already, may spread and extend to being a tribal violence within South Africa. So it's important that we root it out as soon as possible, and we start by using today's khutbah and speaking against it.
Well, Tanile, I'm actually glad you spoke about migration because, we are talking of Africa. We've heard the terms Afrophobia, very, very commonly used nowadays. Yet, when we look at the history of Islam, Islam came to Africa with the first migration before it even reached Medina. So, that alone speaks volumes about the African continent in terms of accommodating migrants and particularly people who were oppressed. And we know what had happened in the early lives of the Muslims when Islam obviously came and they were being persecuted. And this is the reason why my first migration to Abyssinia had taken place. But Tandile, we're going to hold that thought for now. I'm going to go for a quick ad break. We'll be back with you in a minute or two.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Right now, over 150 million children around the world are orphaned, facing hunger, hardship, and uncertainty. With Islamic Relief's Orphan Sponsorship Program, you can provide a child with access to education, nutritious food, essential healthcare, and a safe home. Your sponsorship is not just support, it's hope, security, and a brighter future. Be the reason an orphan child smiles again. Sponsor an orphan today with Islamic Relief.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Are you banking with convenience, transparency, and flexibility? With Al Baraka Bank's transactional banking account, you can enjoy convenient everyday banking designed around your needs. Benefit from zero fees on point-of-sale transactions and manage your banking easily through Al Baraka's secure mobile banking app and internet banking platform. From everyday payments to managing your personal or business banking, Al Baraka makes banking simple, transparent, and convenient. Visit albaraka.co.za to learn more. Al Baraka, your partner bank. Al Baraka Bank Limited is an authorized financial services and credit provider.
Gaza needs your support more than ever. Homes have been shattered and families have lost everything. With your support, our teams are delivering clean water tankers, feeding the hungry, and assisting orphans who have no one left. Let us give Gaza whatever help we can. African Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Well, we continue our broadcast this morning with Thandile Kona, president of the Muslim Youth Movement of South Africa, against a statement by South African Muslim organizations. And I must say, these organizations are quite a cross-section of South African Muslim society. And when you look at them, it's a variety and very, very prominent organizations. There's 22 of them. And Thandile, just to continue, and I've seen actually a Facebook post talking about, the core of the controversy in terms of March on March, never claiming to incite violence. And obviously there is some criticism that is leveled against the statement that has been issued. But the statement also talks about, and I'd like to quote, saying furthermore, that March on March recently met with the United Ulama Council of South Africa. It is curious that these 22 organizations did not consult UXA to better understand the group's objectives and modus operandi before issuing their statement. But the call, and I know this is a statement that had come through, and I personally had made the statement once at a previous forum as well, where it requires the involvement of everyone involved within the Muslim leadership, whether you're talking about UXA, you're talking about ulama bodies, but also the 22 organizations that have supported this statement that has been issued. So it's not only the job of the scholarly fraternity when it comes to negotiating, and this is the reason why the statement that has been issued, and it is just so relevant because these are credible Muslim organizations that have come together to actually issue the statement. So when this post talks about why did they not consult with UXA, the question is, why has UXA also not come together and consulted with these organizations? Because it does require a joint statement and a joint effort.
That's very true, Brother Inayat. And I think I said in the beginning that I want to caution against legitimizing vigilante groups such as March and March, because that's what it is. That's what March and March is. It's a vigilante group. So in as much as we cannot prevent or prohibit anyone from meeting with the organizations that they meet with, UXA claims or obtains its legitimacy from its claim that it represents the Muslim community. Therefore, it is incumbent upon UXA to have consulted the Muslim community before going and meeting with March and March. However, now they have met with March and March, but let's hope that we'll see positive results on the 30th of that meeting on the 30th of June. But I'm cautioning against legitimizing these kinds of groups by meeting with them, by publicizing the meetings with them, and by giving them a platform to spew their hateful rhetoric. So I'm as I say, I want to reiterate again, we are not against UXA meeting whoever they want to meet, but then they should have consulted as well, because in as much as we've issued a statement, we do not claim to represent everyone. We represent the organizations that have signed into the statement. It's different with UXA. UXA is a body or an organization that gets its legitimacy from its claim that it represents the Muslims of South Africa. Therefore, it is an incumbent upon them to consult with the Muslim community before engaging groups such as March and March on our behalf. But as I say, I hope that they are meeting. They are meeting with. We don't know yet what they have discussed, but I'm hoping that there'll be positive results, and we are waiting to see those on the 30th of June or even before that.
Yes, and also I think just finally, I just want to talk about the danger and the long-term implications and consequences. And I think to an extent you do make mention where you allude to that in terms of the anti-immigration movement right across the entire world and how this has actually been exploited. You speak about sinister extremist, racist, and exclusionary political forces to sow division and undermine social cohesion to destabilize society. And this is what I know I just like you to focus or talk a bit on or expand on in terms of the long-term consequences, particularly when we pride ourselves as being a rainbow nation, but our social cohesion and these differences are now being exploited by groups outside, and we've heard about certain possibly third force involvement as far as this is concerned.
Yes, I'm not sure how much of a coincidence is this, but Ghana had a visitor recently from a foreign state, and immediately a week after that, the visitor, they moved a motion with the African Union to have South Africa sanctioned. And there's been these flare-ups. There's been visits to some king in the Eastern Cape. There's calls for independence of the Western Cape. I'm not sure whether this is all this come as a coincidence, but South Africa is in the geopolitical crosswinds mainly because of its case at the ICJ, but also because of our long-standing solidarity with the people of Palestine. So we're in the geopolitical crosswinds. So we must be careful when we do things like this, because this may further serve to isolate us from the rest of the world, and also primarily from the rest of the continent. There are political parties in South Africa, and some of them have something in common in that they get their funds from somewhere, that have got onto the bandwagon and tried to use this issue of immigration as well to garner votes in a very sinister manner. So we must be very careful and be very cautious in how we look at things. We must not look at them at face value. The long-term effects of this is the isolation of South Africa, especially in the African continent. It has already started to happen, although not on a large scale, but it has the potential of growing into quite a serious threat to South Africans who are living in other countries in Africa or who are traveling to other countries in Africa. So we must therefore tread carefully when we deal with this issue. As I say, there is no way that whatever actions, vigilante actions that are taken, that those will stop migration. The duty is, the obligation is on government to properly regulate migration using lawful means. Therefore, the government must make sure that it secures South Africa's borders, but also it controls migration. But we should not at any point allow the victimization, the harassment, and the use of this issue by extremists and political opportunists.
Well, Jazakallah khairan so much for that, my brother. All the best to you, and we do appreciate you taking time out on this beautiful day of Jum'ah with us right here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah for having me. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
President of the Muslim Youth Movement of South Africa, Thandile Kona, with us this morning against the statement that was issued with regards to the planned shutdown for June the 30th. Was that we're going to go for a break? We come back and we will be talking cigarettes. The CEO of Tobacco, Alcohol and Gambling Advisory talking about traders warning the tobacco bill could cost thousands their livelihoods in this country.